Am I wrong for giving a large sum of money to my ex-wife against my girlfriend's wishes? I know how this sounds, like I'm still attached to my ex, like I can't set boundaries, like I'm prioritizing the wrong person. But before you judge me, let me tell you about the night that changed everything. Because sometimes being a parent means making choices that might cost you everything else you care about. And sometimes doing the right thing for your child means betraying the trust of the person you love most. It was 2 in the morning on a Tuesday when my phone rang with that special ringtone. I'd assigned to my ex-wife, Lisa, the one reserved only for emergencies. Involving our 8-year-old daughter, Emma, I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Jessica, my girlfriend of 8 months, and took the call in the kitchen. Lisa's voice was shaking. Our daughter had been having stomach pains for weeks, and that night she'd collapsed at dinner. The emergency room had found a twisted bowel that required immediate surgery or Emma could die. The surgeon was ready to operate first thing in the morning, but insurance had denied coverage, calling it a pre-existing condition due to a technicality when Lisa switched jobs. The surgery would cost $15,000, and the hospital demanded payment upfront. Lisa had tried everything: payment plans, medical financing, calling every family member and friend she knew. Her credit was too poor for the medical loan companies, and the interest rates they offered would have bankrupted her anyway. Then I heard Emma in the background, crying in that weak, pained way that meant she was really, truly sick. When she got on the phone and asked if I was coming to see her, her voice so small and scared, I knew there was no choice to make. I drove to the hospital through the empty streets, my mind racing. I had the money barely. Jessica and I had been saving for our wedding next year, and we'd managed to put away almost exactly $15,000. But touching that money meant breaking one of the most important boundaries we'd established in our relationship. From the hospital parking lot, I called the bank's 24-hour line and transferred our entire wedding fund to pay for Emma's surgery. My hands were shaking as I entered the account numbers, knowing I was about to destroy the trust of the woman I loved to save the life of my daughter. The surgery was successful. Emma would make a full recovery. But as I sat in that hospital chair watching my little girl sleep peacefully for the first time in weeks, I realized I had no idea how to explain to Jessica that I'd just spent our future without saying a word. The drive home was the longest hour of my life. Jessica and I had been incredibly careful about blending our lives. She'd been married before too, and she understood how complicated co-parenting could be. We'd established clear boundaries about finances, about my relationship with Lisa, about how much involvement my ex should have in our new life together. One of those boundaries was that any major financial decision over $5,000 would be discussed between us first. It had been Jessica's idea, actually. After being burned in her previous marriage by a husband who made unilateral financial decisions, she'd been very clear about needing to feel like a true partner, especially when it came to money that affected both our futures. I'd agreed completely at the time. It seemed reasonable, mature, the kind of boundary that healthy couples should have, and I'd just obliterated it completely. As I pulled into our driveway, I knew I should march inside and tell Jessica everything immediately. I should explain about Emma's emergency, about the insurance denial, about the impossible choice I'd had to make. Instead, I made what I now realize was the second worst decision of that terrible night. When Jessica asked where I'd been, I told her Lisa had called because Emma had a stomach bug and needed to go to the hospital. I said everything was fine now, just a scare. The lie tasted like poison in my mouth, but I convinced myself I just needed time to figure out how to replace the money before she noticed it was gone. For 2 weeks, I lived with that secret eating me alive. I threw myself into work, taking every extra project I could find. I looked into part-time weekend jobs. I even considered asking my parents for a loan, though I knew they'd ask questions I couldn't answer. Jessica noticed my behavior change, of course. I was distracted, anxious, working late every night. When she asked if everything was okay, I blamed it on work stress, on Emma's health scare, on anything except the truth that was destroying me from the inside. What do you think so far? Was I right to prioritize my daughter's emergency? Or should I have found a way to discuss it with Jessica first, even if it meant delaying Emma's surgery? Let me know in the comments, because I'm still not sure if I handled this the right way. Every day that passed made the lie bigger and harder to carry. Emma recovered beautifully. She was back to her normal, energetic self within days of the surgery. But every time Jessica talked about our wedding plans, every time she mentioned something we should save up for, I felt like I was betraying her all over again. Jessica was making plans based on money that no longer existed. She'd show me venue options, talk about the dress she wanted to try on, discuss honeymoon destinations we could afford with our current savings rate. Each conversation was like a knife in my chest, knowing I'd already spent the foundation of those dreams on something I couldn't tell her about. The worst part was watching her be excited about our future, while I knew I'd already damaged it beyond repair. She'd hum while making coffee, leave little notes about wedding ideas, talk about how proud she was of how well we managed money together, while I was frantically trying to figure out how to replace $15,000 without her noticing. Started picking up freelance work, working nights and weekends on side projects. Jessica asked if I was taking on too much, worried that I was burning myself out. I told her I just wanted to make sure we had extra money for the wedding, which was technically true, but felt like another lie. The anxiety was consuming me. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus, couldn't enjoy anything because I was constantly calculating how long it would take to replace the money and whether I could do it before Jessica noticed. Every time she touched our laptop or mentioned checking our accounts, my heart would race. After 2 weeks of living this way, Jessica confronted me about my behavior. She could tell something was wrong. I was distant, distracted, working constantly. When she asked if there was something I needed to tell her, I looked into her trusting eyes and lied again, saying everything was fine. I want to thank everyone who's still watching this story unfold. I know what I did was wrong, and I know what's coming next is going to be hard to hear. But your support means everything. And the most devastating part of this story is still ahead. The truth came out 3 days later in the most mundane way possible. Jessica was paying bills while I was at work, something we did together every month to stay on top of our shared expenses. She called me at the office around 2 in the afternoon, and I knew immediately from her tone that my time was up. She found the $15,000 transfer to St. Mary's Hospital on our bank statement. I left work immediately and drove home in complete panic, knowing that the conversation waiting for me would determine the future of our relationship. I found Jessica sitting at our kitchen table with the bank statement spread out in front of her face pale with what I now realize was not just anger, but heartbreak. When she asked me to explain, I told her everything. About Emma's surgery, about the insurance denial, about the impossible choice between watching my daughter suffer and betraying Jessica's trust, about the 2 weeks of lies and the desperate attempts to replace the money without her knowing. Jessica listened in complete silence until I finished talking. Then she looked up at me with eyes I'd never seen before, cold, distant, like she was looking at a stranger. She laid out exactly what I'd done, instead of trusting her to understand an emergency. I'd made a unilateral decision about our shared future and then lied about it for 2 weeks. She wasn't just angry about the money. She was devastated by the lies. She felt like I'd proven that when push came to shove, I didn't see her as a real partner, just as someone who lived in my house and helped pay the bills. The worst part was when she told me she would have understood about Emma's surgery, that she loved my daughter too and would have immediately agreed to use our savings if I'd just been honest with her. But instead, I'd decided she was the enemy. I'd decided she was someone who would stand in the way of helping my child, when the truth was, I'd never even given her the chance to prove otherwise. The fight that followed revealed that I had treated her like an obstacle instead of a partner. I had prioritized avoiding a difficult conversation over respecting the foundation of trust we'd built together. She was absolutely right. The conversation that followed revealed cracks in our relationship that went much deeper than money. Jessica felt like she'd always been competing with my past, not just with Lisa, but with the entire complex web of responsibilities and loyalties that came with my divorce and Emma's needs. She'd known when we got together that Emma would always be my priority, and she'd never expected to come first. But she'd thought she'd at least be considered. She'd thought when major decisions needed to be made, I'd see her as someone worth consulting. The money wasn't even the real problem, she explained. We could rebuild our savings, postpone the wedding. What she couldn't rebuild was trust in a partner who saw her as an outsider when things got difficult. I tried everything I could think of to fix what I'd broken. I apologized, I explained. I begged her to understand that Emma's emergency had made me panic and act irrationally. I promised it would never happen again, that I'd learned my lesson about communication and trust. But Jessica had heard promises from her ex-husband too. She'd lived through the slow erosion of trust that comes from emergency exceptions and just this once. Decisions that gradually teach you that you're not really a partner in your own relationship. She needed space to think about whether she could be with someone who fundamentally didn't see her as an equal partner. She packed a bag and went to stay with her sister. That was 6 weeks ago. Emma is completely healthy now. The surgery was a complete success, and she's back to being the happy, energetic kid she's always been. She asks about Jessica constantly. When is she coming over? Why doesn't she come to dinner anymore? Did she do something wrong? I tell Emma that Jessica and I are figuring some things out, but the truth is that Jessica won't return my calls. Lisa has offered to pay back the money, picking up a second job and insisting on sending me $500 every month until the debt is cleared. But that's not really the point anymore. The point is that I had to choose between my daughter's life and my girlfriend's trust. And I chose in a way that cost me both relationships I valued most. Emma is safe, which is what matters most. But Jessica is gone, which feels like losing a limb. I've had 6 weeks to think about whether I'd make the same choice again. And honestly, I don't know. I'd still save Emma. There was never a question about that. But maybe I could have found a way to include Jessica in that decision, instead of treating her like an obstacle to overcome. Maybe I could have trusted that the woman who'd spent 8 months building a relationship with my daughter would understand why saving that daughter had to come first. Maybe I could have given her the chance to be the partner I claimed I wanted her to be. So here's my question. Am I wrong for prioritizing my child's medical emergency over my girlfriend's financial boundaries? Should I have woken Jessica up and risked a fight that might have delayed Emma's surgery? Or was Jessica wrong to make this about trust when a child's life was at stake? The truth is, I think we were both right and both wrong. I was right to save Emma, but wrong to exclude Jessica. From that choice, Jessica was right to expect honesty from her partner, but maybe wrong to make this into a relationship-ending betrayal. When the stakes were literally life and death, what would you have done in my situation? How do you balance the responsibilities of being a parent with the commitments of being a partner? And is there a way back from the kind of broken trust that comes from good intentions, executed in the worst possible way? Let me know in the comments, because I'm still trying to figure out if I made the right choice for the wrong reasons, or if there was never a right choice to begin with. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe for more real stories about the impossible choices we face when love, family, and loyalty collide. And stick around for the next video, where I'll share another story that'll make you question everything you think you know about priorities and partnerships. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.